So we're recording for our editing with Camera Raw. So once you open up Bridge, what you want to do is find 8 photos that you can copy into a new folder. So I'm just going to select these 3 by holding Command and clicking on each photo. And then if I control click or right click, I can choose the copy to option. I'm just going to go to choose folder. I'm going to go to my desktop, and then I'm just going to create a new folder on my desktop. Let's call this like photos for editing. I would recommend just creating a new folder for each project so you stay organized. Once I click open, it's just going to copy those photos from the one folder, leave them in that folder, and then copy new ones of those into that one. So I'm just going to click on my desktop, and then I create my photos for editing folder, and there's my 3 photos that have been copied in there. So a couple ways we can copy our photos or make a second version of it is if I open it into Photoshop. I'm just going to double click on my photo and open up Photoshop. And then all we need to do is just go File, Save As, and basically I'm just going to make a second version. You could call it copy. So I'm just going to go to the end of the name right before it says .jpg. So you don't want to do anything after .jpg. Basically just in front of that .jpg. I'm going to call this v2. I'm going to make sure it's in the right folder, make sure the format's a JPEG, and then save. Make sure your quality is where you want it, so I usually do around 12. The default's 8, so you might need to change that. Hit OK. So it's going to just save out a second version. One thing too, if you're in Bridge, if you click on the title, just click on it, you can change it. So maybe I want to call this like Flower 1. And then this would be my Flower 1 V2. And so you can retitle them, just click on the title, and then kind of do one click, and then a second click on the title, and then you can change it. So what I'm going to do is click on the V2. So I always want to keep my original photo untouched. So that'll be my before. And then the second version, that's the one I'm going to edit on in Camera Raw. So I'm just going to right click or control click, go up to Open in Camera Raw. So I'm not going to show all the settings like I did yesterday, but you can click on these different tabs and do your different adjustments, slide them. Just experiment with the different sliders, see what you can do with the program. So what I'm going to do is do that kind of selective color look again. So again, you can adjust the vibrance of the colors. Maybe add some clarity and texture to bring out some details. That looks kind of nice. You can adjust the curve, so I can adjust the shadows. I can go into my midtones and then my highlights, right, with the curves. Detail, that's where if you want to add sharpening, if it's kind of like out of focus, you could add some sharpening. If you had some noise, you could reduce the noise. Color mixers, this is where I'm going to do the one color look. So I'm just going to click on saturation, and I'm just going to drop my other colors. So if you want to do like an isolated color, and my greens, there we go. So I'm just going to leave the blues and purples up, and I'm just going to bring up the saturation of my purple a little bit. If I click on hue and go to purples, I can actually change that hue of that color. So that's kind of the benefit, is you can really tweak your colors in Camera Raw. Luminance is how bright do I want that color, or dark. So I think maybe around there looks pretty good. Color grading, if I wanted to add a tint to my highlights, midtones, or shadows, so I did kind of like a split tone with like warm highlights and cool shadows, right? That looks kind of good. Optics, you're probably not going to use. Geometry, you're probably not going to use. That has to do with correcting perspective. But the effects tab I do use quite a bit. So adding like film grain to my photo or a vignette. You can do a light or dark vignette. Again, you can change the midpoint of it, the shape of it. You can add a super soft feather or super hard feather. I usually do a super soft one. So something like that looks pretty good. We do have our crop tool. So I'm just going to kind of center it up, kind of get it centered in the frame like so. So kind of have even spacing on each of the sides. Let's just do a little bit more from the top. There we go. And then double click or hit return, and then it'll do your crop. We do have a little healing brush. So if I zoom in, you can press Command plus or Command minus to zoom in or out, or you can zoom in with this little thing underneath the panel, or you can zoom in and out. And so with the healing brush, you can change the size, you can have a soft feathered edge. And so if you click on a spot to remove, it'll try its best to heal it. You can adjust what it's kind of healing from. So I'm just gonna grab that, grab some of these spots. And so it's good for like blemishes and those kind of things if you have spots you want to get rid of. The adjustment brush is pretty useful. So if let's say I want to brighten up an area, I'm going to bring up the exposure, and then I can just paint. And so wherever I paint with my brush will do that adjustment. So it's kind of useful, and then you can use all these different sliders to adjust, where you painted, which is pretty useful. I'm just going to zero it out, but just how that works. Graduated filter is pretty nice. If you zoom out, Command minus, and then you kind of if you have like a sky you want it to darken, you just pull it down. And so then if you kind of adjusted your settings, let's maybe make it like a cooler temperature too, like some blue. It'll basically go from like a solid adjustment to a clear gradient. So it's kind of nice if you wanted to like darken the sky. I'm just going to zero that back out. There's a radial filter. Basically, it's like a circle filter where solid to clear as a circle. There's a red eye correction. The one I use too is the presets. So if you click on presets, you can go into a different category. So there's like different categories here. There's like vintage styles, and you can kind of hover over. And basically, it's going to apply different settings, but some of them is kind of cool if you like certain kind of preset looks. So you can kind of go through those. That looks kind of cool. So, all right, once you're done, we just need to save these camera raw settings onto my photo. So all I'm gonna do is just click open. It's gonna open the photo into Photoshop. And basically we just need to save these camera raw settings onto the photo. So I'm just gonna go into Photoshop. And then we're just gonna save it. So go File, Save. So it's my flower1v2.jpg. It's in the right folder. The format looks good. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to replace it because camera raw, basically once you save it as a new one, and if it has the same name, it's going to ask to replace it. Because we already made a new name, I'm just going to click replace and then hit OK in my 12 quality. So then if I go back to bridge, here's my before and after, right? So then when I go create a new Google slide, let's do a new presentation. Right, I'm just going to drag the before and after onto my presentation. So I need to see the original, and I need to see the after, right, the edit. So you should have both photos next to each other on a slide. You can type before and after, but obviously I can kind of tell, what you did. But as long as I can see the original, then I can actually have something to compare to and actually see your changes. You can talk about kind of what you adjusted to. So that's what I would kind of do that way. All right, I'm just going to stop the recording.